Hello everyone and welcome. And today I'm delighted to introduce you to Raes MacDonald. She is the founder and senior facilitator at Raes Mac Training. So welcome, Raes. How are you?
Hi, thanks, Kaylee.
Thank you. So Raes is going to talk to us today about the world of training and the Raes way of doing training. So Raes, before we get started, do you want to tell us all a little bit about yourself and about your business?
Absolutely, thank you. Well, I grew up in Te Awamutu, born and bred, and I've lived in a lot of places around the country and have come back home now to be closer to family and just love being back on the farm, being in that environment. I grew up as an avid reader, I'd have to say, a geek at school, and and then it grew into, I was in banking for years and years, so I have an affinity with numbers, and I always wanted to be a teacher, so I thought I'd go down that track and do teacher aiding. And I realised, no, those people are amazing. The school teachers, they are amazing. I take my hat off to them, and there's no way I could do that role. And then my third child, I'm a mother of three, she was diagnosed with dyslexia. And it's a really tricky learning difference to have. There's not a lot of people that are familiar with it, but there's actually a lot of us that have it. And so I thought, right, how can I help people in the workplace? There's a lot of support for people around, for children, but people in the workplace can play out in various ways, and including behaviour. So I trained up in that area because I've seen people struggle when they've actually got a lot of talent behind them. So I made a career out of strengthening people with learning differences, and then also branching out to leadership, because a lot of these people have the skills to be on the shop floor, they've got the craftsmanship behind them, and then they just haven't had that leadership training to support them be as awesome as they can be. So that's that's how I got into that, and I spend my weekends sort of outdoors, loving the view, and out on the Harley.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, thanks for sharing that bit of background, and really interesting where you've come from. So as a trainer, and we'll probably get some of this as I ask you some questions, you've obviously got a real aptitude for patience and perseverance and guidance and support as well, just looking at that background that you've got. So that's wonderful. So we'll get started on my questions, which I will read. So Raes, can you please tell me and the audience which businesses and leaders will be pleased to have had a chat with you about the services that you provide?
I generally have an affinity with small businesses, so SMEs, and I sort of founded my business around the quote from Sir Richard Branson, that's train people well enough and so that they can leave, because a lot of people do get skilled up, and then people get frustrated, business owners get frustrated because they've invested and then they leave, right? But the key to that is also on the other side is treat them well enough so that they don't want to leave. So my second part of my business is building up that culture for people so that they actually know that they're valued and they want to grow with the business, not just leave. So if there's a lot of businesses out there that are actually really busy just surviving, and what we want to try and do is that they're just being productive. So we don't know what we don't know. So there's a lot of businesses out there that haven't had a conversation with their staff about how they can upskill on those soft skills. So that might be the reading and the writing or the planning, or it could be leadership skills around the delegation making their team more accountable. But it's also things like resilience and having those tough conversations, or I consider them actually important conversations, around how was your day? How's your mental well-being? Did you have a successful week? What do you want from next week? And setting some intentions. So there's also in our market, in the training market, there's a lot of businesses that offer a similar sort of product. So there might be leadership, 4 or 5 in the Waikato, for example, that do a leadership, but they might be more aimed at higher level management, or they might be middle management. And some of them are 2-day workshops, some of them are 10-week come in to the business sort of workshops. And it's finding the right business, the right training for your staff, and bearing in mind one size doesn't fit all. So if you've got a staff member with a learning difference, for example, you're not going to put them on a 2-day training because that's just overwhelming for them. Right. They're not going to have a chance to put it into practice. And so we want to try and align them with a provider that actually gives more coaching than just a workshop.
Right. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So and that's why Ripple has aligned, we've aligned with you, because it's a bit more, people's hard skills are not everything that they've got to offer. And I think the industry is starting to learn that people's soft skills are valuable as well. And I think also, in my opinion, everybody has some form of leadership in their role as well. Would you agree with that?
Totally. I believe we're all born with leadership. It's what can happen is that if we have a role model that doesn't portray or display the actual leadership skills that we need, we don't know any different when we go into that role. So if you've got a leader that isn't very confident at delegating, and then you're stepping into that role, you're not going to have that skill because you haven't actually seen that in action to be successful at it.
One of the biggest mistakes I see, particularly on our recruitment face, is companies are really quite quick to promote a really good worker into a position of management, but they accidentally set them up to fail because that person has had no leadership training. So this is where your services are critical, really, aren't they? Because just because somebody's really good at performing their function, it doesn't automatically, magically make them a good leader, right?
That's correct. I mean, you think if you've got a company car, for example, a lot of people will turn around and they just drive the car. They get in the car. They don't worry about the fueling of it or the running of it. It's done for them. And so when you find yourself in a leadership role, first-time leaders, that's all that stuff that first-time leaders do, dealing with the management and bringing the information down to the lower levels, planning, staff juggling, all of those things have always been done for you. And then all of a sudden you've got to do it, and it's quite overwhelming. And so that's where I come in and support the businesses and identify, have a conversation with those leaders. What are you confident doing? Where can we strengthen your skills? And there's so many things that they could do out there, and it's aligning the right training company that'll help them learn in the way that they need to.
And you mentioned the resilience of employees or team members, but the coaching that you do builds business resilience as well.
Absolutely. And for any business to grow, you need to change, right? And change can be hard for people. So a lot of employers sort of don't understand the impact of change on their staff, and so they don't communicate in a way that they need to. So it's getting those people in, like Ripple, in to say, right, here's the business plan. What is included in that? What do we need to upskill our staff in as well to prepare them for these changes so that we're all going in the same direction?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, great. All right, so we'll move on to my second question. So most people will have a perception and perhaps even an experience of what training looks like in the workplace. Can you tell me how you are different in delivering the training and how your training programs are different?
That's a really good question, because some people haven't even had training in the workplace. They've gone away it might be on their own to do some training. I like to come in and work with a team. If you're going to invest in your first line leaders or your ground floor employees, you actually want to be part of that. As a management team, you need to be part of that. So one of my point of differences is actually getting the managers involved right from day one and finding out what their expectations are of their employees, because I could come in and train and then walk out again and no one actually has any idea what I've trained them on, how they've responded to it, and whether they've actually been capable of learning in the format that we've decided. Because you might have one person that needs paperwork, you might have one person that has to have hands-on. So you need to be engaged with the employers for that whole process. So I will come in, involve the management right from day one, but also when we're doing some of the team building exercises, they might be involved, they might be guest speakers in the program. So it's tailored for what the business needs rather than a set program. And that's very important that they have that buy-in. And then also we have a meeting at the end of it to actually just make sure that I've met their expectations, that the staff have met their expectations, and that there is a future pathway so that those staff continue to feel valued during that process. So, I'm just checking my quick notes there.
No problem.
When you're working with teams, if a manager's a part of that journey, then the staff are likely to actually build more rapport with that manager. They're actually going to open up about any struggles that they have, rather than just saying, okay, well, Raes said we should be doing it this way, so let's do it this way. They're going to go back to the manager and say, hey, look, what do you think of this? And I think that's a really important part of the process. And if there's any resistance from the manager, I've built that rapport with the manager already to come and have a conversation with the team member and the manager to see what the best way forward would be.
It sounds like you operate quite an intimate type of training, so it's really about the people, and I guess you would gather a lot of information about the individuals and who you're training, and that's valuable information that you can take back and share with management so they can learn how to communicate with their teams as well. Would that be right?
Indeed. And it's a really important part for the managers to, quite often they will rely on their team leaders to actually be that person to know how the rest of the team are going. So I try and encourage that whole collaboration right across the business, so that everyone is aware of it, and just so that they're all confident. For any company, any business, the foundation is trust, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you've got to build that trust. And I'm fortunate enough to build that rapport with the companies. I do come in and disrupt a company. I have to say that if there are times where the company will say, well, we want the staff training to go this way, and if it's not in the best interest of the business, I will gladly say to them, hey, maybe we could look at it this way and bring in your way as well, because that's my field of expertise. It's not theirs. That's why they get people in.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. So tell me, are you able to tell me about one of your most popular training programs?
The one in the Waikato at the moment is for first line leaders, those people that have worked on the ground floor for most of their career, and then they find themselves in a leadership role where they actually haven't had the opportunity to be set up for success in that role. So there might be communication issues, there might be planning areas that they need to strengthen. So time management is a big one, delegation, and accountability. Because all of a sudden they're finding themselves having to tell people that they worked with what to do, then it can be really, really difficult for them. So they don't have confidence to do it.
Quite often they will go to the dictatorial side of things. You must, and sometimes they'll stay in the position of a co-worker, whereas the team needs leadership. So there's a whole spectrum there as well.
Indeed. And you come from, I really encourage a system called management by walking around. So this is going around your staff every single day and actually finding how your staff are doing. Nothing related to work. Nothing. It don't involve work. Yeah. Just how are the kids? How's the sports going? How did you win your game on the weekend? Did you enjoy your walk in the bush? Those sorts of conversations, just one-on-one with the staff, not lunchroom conversations. And then also another really good one to build that rapport for them is what's referred to as a Gemba walk. And so it's going in and helping people understand in a mentoring way, how to fix a problem. So there might be an issue with the machinery, for example. And so you come in and ask those important questions so that that person learns next time how to fix it themselves rather than calling you in. So if you went in and just go, oh, this is how I fix it, what do they do? Next time it's broken down, they're going to come back to you, aren't they?
Yeah, right.
But a lot of us we don't know how to ask those questions. We don't know how to ask the questions to build the confidence of our team. So as a new team leader, we work on that, trying to get that so that you are coaching your staff so that you can then concentrate on those important jobs.
And it's critical what you do, because otherwise you can end up very quickly losing a valuable employee. And what I mean by that is that when you take somebody into a management position and you've not given them the tools for success, they quickly become unmotivated. They feel like they can't do the job, and they won't necessarily go back to management and go, help, I need help. They'll very often just leave.
Indeed, they do. And, it's common knowledge that emotions drive our behaviours, right? So, if the behaviour then drives our results. So if our emotions aren't on a high or on a par, then we're going to get results that we really don't want.
Yeah. We're vulnerable at the moment. We're still vulnerable from the happenings of 2020, and I think we will be for some time to come. So it's really important that we get everybody on the same page.
Indeed. Yeah. Okay. And a lot of us don't talk about that sort of stuff. So
it is. And I get that a lot from managers. It's like I ask the question, it might be, how are you? But I know I'm not getting the right answer. Well, I'm presuming that you can train them how to extract the information that's required to make decisions upon and really look after their team players.
And to identify when they're not really a green light on the how are you scale, they might be an orange light, and that's a warning sign for triggers like burnout and, you know, the stress, depression, all of those. And it's how to identify that. It's a really important level as a team leader. It's really easy. If you don't have that, if you're not set up for success, then you're at high risk of those sorts of things, let alone you're unable to support your management. And so because you're not in the right state of mind, or you're trying to swim instead of you know, instead of actually operating on a really awesome level. So yeah, it's so critical. And this is why I come in and I work with the teams to actually open up those lines of vulnerability, so that, which is something that a lot of people in New Zealand are not familiar with, like we're not comfortable with, and having those important conversations so that trust stays there, so that our foundation of the business is operating, because without that, things start to crumble really quick.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Ray. All right, so we'll move on to my next question, my last question. You obviously fit well into the workplace training, but are there other organisations or groups who would find value in your services as well?
Absolutely. There's anyone where people are collaborating or need to be collaborating. So it might be the organisations, it might be community organisations. So you might have, say for example, the SPCA, or where there's a lot of volunteers. A lot of those people don't get trained in dealing, and they aren't a part of the intention setting of how the business is to run, or the organisation. It might be sports clubs. So even getting the team to have an intention setting session, so that they actually know we all want this from our year or our season of soccer or rugby or anything. Or it might be for a fundraising event for one of the charities, and they say, right, where do we want to go? And there's a lot of hands. Quite often in those scenarios, there's a lot of hands on deck, and sometimes the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. So I come in and help those organisations just get a bit more structure and a bit more, so they're all on the same page before they dive into it.
Great. Because you can, just while you were talking, I was thinking, you know, you can watch really strong teams collapse when leadership changes as well. So it's not to say that the leader is good, bad, or otherwise. It's just, you spoke about change before. Change can simply cause more change and unsettle, right? So even the strongest of teams need constant or continual support, right?
Absolutely. Teams can get derailed, whether it be in the business, whether it be sports teams or organisations, just by a change in their leadership or a change in their structure. Might not be necessarily the leadership. And it's having the confidence of everybody to actually go, well, we're still going to be okay. Understanding the process of the change cycle, and you know, it goes down, and there's a bit of denial going on in some cases, that is this really happening? Is this going to happen to us? And it might even be just a machine on the line, you know, a new machine coming into the business that's actually going to mean the business is a bit more efficient. Well, that can cause disruption, because they don't know, well, is that my job? What's going to happen? So it's making sure that the team leaders can answer the questions, are confident to answer the questions, and also for them to understand that they're not going to know all the questions, and that's okay as well. You know, that is part of change. So yeah,
that's right. And people sometimes just want to feel supported, and sometimes just want to feel heard as well.
Very important, both of them. Yeah.
So Ray, businesses go, oh, it's another expense, and look, I haven't got it in the budget, or oh, I'm not sure whether I whether I should put the money into training or put it over here. For those businesses, is there a way that they can measure the return on their investment in your services? How would they best measure that to make sure that they've got a return?
There's a couple of ways. The emotional side of the rest of the team, so the motivation level of the rest of the team. If you've got a team leader that's out of sorts, then they're floundering, for the want of a better word there, the rest of the team are not going to be organised. So your production's going to come down. The other thing will be is if your team leader is not confident with planning, they're not confident with their communication skills, they might be a dictator that doesn't work for the rest of the team, then you're going to have staff turnover. You're going to have absenteeism. So the best way that you would measure the return on investment is that your staff are actually staying, that they're attending work, and that they're actually staying in your company. That's your best return on investment. And that's what's really critical, Kayleen, to actually have a look at what the best training for your company is, or for your staff is. If you're a small business and you've only got 1 or 2 team leaders, then you're not going to get a trainer in. It's not to actually train those 2 people. It's just not worth that investment. You're not going to get the return on investment. You would put them in send them to an outsourced contractor to do a consortia training with other businesses. So, but if you've got 5 or 6 people that are first line leaders, they might have been in the role for a while, but they still need to strengthen some of their skills, and you just want to set a standard for the business, for your team leaders, then it's a really powerful thing, because all of a sudden they start collaborating. You get them spending some time just with each other, just all your team leaders, they start collaborating. Now that's good business sense, isn't it? They all start, oh, well, we could help you this way, and what if we did this, and what if we do that? Yeah, so it's a really, training, you're right, training's a really tricky one. There's no set percentage or numbers often with the return on investment. However, the best thing is the happiness of your staff, the motivation of your staff, the reduction in your absenteeism, and lower staff turnover would be your measurement scale.
I mean, it's a massive investment to bring on a new employee. It's, I don't know whether you know this, but to bring on one new hire is 48 and a half man or people hours. And that's just in time, and it's 8 interviews before you select your hire, and hopefully it's a good hire. So you've already made a massive investment in a new hire. So train them, equip them set them up for success, as we keep saying. So it's a no-brainer, and what you do is it's one factor in generating business resilience, profitability, market share growth, great employee brands. There's so many things there. And when companies do it right, it's perfectly reasonable for them to see a 20% increase in profitability across the board. So training's an important component. And I know you're very generous with your time. If a business leader is undecided, you'll always have a chat with them and work out with them if it's the right service for them, right?
And absolutely. The big thing for managers is to actually have that conversation with us and say, this is my problem. Or the issue that I'm having, because quite often training comes from an issue.
Right.
A lot of people aren't proactive in my mind, aren't proactive in actually saying, right, I've got a new leader coming on board, let's train them first. They will put the person in the role first and then go, okay, well, this isn't going as well as I thought would be or could be. So let's actually get some training for them, and while we're there, we'll do the rest of the team. So we want to make sure that those people having the training, the managers or the business is paying for training that's actually appropriate for them. It might be that there's some other conversation we could have around some other ideas to try first to combat that particular issue, and then we look at the big picture of the training. It could be even part of it could be something like settling in, and just one of the things I work with teams is the emotional culture deck. So if your team's actually got a culture that isn't as stable as you would like, or you might not even have set cultures, then we come in and I'll do a workshop with the whole team. And that might be all the training that you need to solve some of the issue that you have.
Great. Excellent. Yeah. Well, Ray, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. And I hope some of our audience reach out and explore training amongst your employees and leaders to be and existing leaders. Is there anything you want to tell our audience before we go?
Well, I just think the biggest thing for any training that you have is using it, of the soft skills anyway, is to break down some of the barriers in the workplace.
Right.
And it might be confidence of people, it might be conflict, it could be just lack of experience, but all training is there to break down some of the barriers so that they can actually go home at the end of the day and feel like they've had a wonderful, productive day. That's all a lot of us go to work for.
Yeah. How wonderful. I'm sure there's a lot of employees going, yes, please.
Yeah.
Hey, that's been awesome. Thank you so much. I hope we've whetted some of our audience's appetite. So thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and bye for now, and stay safe.
Thanks, Kayleen. Bye.